Picture this. It's April 15th, 2013. Thousands of runners are closing in on the finish line of the Boston Marathon. Then, out of nowhere, two explosions absolutely shattered the celebration. The race is immediately stopped, the streets are just filled with total confusion. And sadly, so many athletes who had literally trained for years, well, they never crossed that finish line.
Among those people was a woman named Adrianne Haslet. Now, Adrianne was a professional ballroom dancer, but in the attack, she lost her left leg. Just think about that for a second. Overnight, the career she had spent years and years building just seemed to vanish.
You know, a lot of people naturally assumed her dreams were just over. But Adrianne, she saw the situation completely differently. She fully accepted what had happened, but she absolutely refused to surrender to it. And years later, wearing a prosthetic leg, she actually returned to the Boston Marathon. Not just watching from the sidelines as a spectator, but as a runner who finally crossed that finish line she had once been denied. Her story highlights this incredible truth that I think a lot of us misunderstand. Acceptance and giving up, they are definitely not the same thing.
So when life throws us a massive curveball, we usually think we only have two choices, right? We can either fight reality tooth and nail, or we just surrender to it completely.
But here's the thing we're unpacking in this explainer today. There's actually a third option: acceptance. Now, acceptance doesn't mean you're approving of the pain. It definitely doesn't mean pretending that suffering is somehow a good thing. It really just means recognizing reality exactly as it is, so that we can actually decide what to do next.
Think about it. A person who refuses to accept reality, they often waste years just wishing the past had never happened. But a person who accepts reality, they start building a future. And modern psychology actually backs this up. Research on resilience shows us that people recover from adversity so much better when they stop resisting facts they can't change and instead start pouring their energy into what they can actually influence. So this isn't pessimism at all. It's just really practical wisdom.
Imagine you're trying to sail a boat against a super powerful current, right? No matter how determined you are, just denying that the current exists isn't gonna move the boat. But the moment you acknowledge the direction the water is actually flowing, well, then you can adjust your sails and keep going. That's the core difference. Acceptance creates movement. Denial just creates exhaustion.
We can see this in nature too. After a massive forest fire, the landscape usually looks completely lifeless. Trees are just reduced to these burnt, black trunks. The ground is totally covered in ash. Honestly, it looks like the end. But here's an amazing fact. Many species of pine trees actually only release their seeds after they've been exposed to that intense heat. So it looks like total destruction actually becomes the catalyst for new growth. The fire is accepted. The forest doesn't sit there and argue with reality. It literally grows right through it. Nature is constantly reminding us that endings are sometimes exactly what prepare the conditions for brand new beginnings.
Let's look at a historical example. The Apostle Paul experienced intense imprisonment, severe rejection, incredible hardship, and total uncertainty. But even through all of that, he wrote something really remarkable. He said, "I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances." You really have to notice that word learned. Contentment didn't just happen for him automatically. It was a discipline he had to build. Paul never stopped his work, he never stopped serving, and he never gave up hope. He accepted his harsh circumstances for sure, but he never allowed those circumstances to define his purpose. In his case, acceptance actually strengthened his mission. Giving up? Well, that would have just ended the whole thing. So to break it down, giving up says, hey, nothing can improve. But acceptance says, okay, this is where I am right now, and I'm going to move forward from here.
When you give up, you're basically closing every single door. But when you accept things, you start looking around for a new one to open. Giving up believes the story is completely over. Acceptance, on the other hand, turns the page and just starts writing the next chapter. The difference between these two mindsets might sound small when we talk about it, but in real life, it is absolutely enormous.
Because here's the reality for all of us. Every single person eventually faces something they never wanted. Maybe it's a deeply broken relationship. Maybe it's a career that just suddenly ends out of nowhere. Or maybe it's a lifelong dream that, for whatever reason, never actually becomes reality.
The real question isn't whether or not these hard moments are going to come. The question is, what are we going to do when they finally arrive? Are we going to spend years fighting a reality that literally cannot be changed? Or will we choose to accept today so we can actually build a tomorrow? See, acceptance is definitely not a weakness. It's very often the first, most courageous step you can take toward real healing, wisdom, and personal growth.
Life doesn't always hand us the ending we expected, right?
But it does frequently give us the opportunity to write a brand new beginning. Now, to be clear, acceptance doesn't just magically erase the pain. What it does is transform that pain into a starting point, instead of letting it be a stopping point. Giving up is telling yourself that the future is already set in stone. Acceptance is recognizing that, yeah, while yesterday definitely cannot be rewritten, tomorrow is still completely unwritten.
So I want to leave you with this to think about. What part of your own life are you still trying to change that fundamentally cannot be changed? And more importantly, what could become possible for you if you accepted it and actively chose to move forward today? Perhaps true acceptance isn't about letting go of hope at all. Maybe it's just letting go of the illusion that the past can be changed, so we are finally truly free to build the future that still can be.